Hi guys, my name's Payne McMillan and welcome back to Cultivating Talks. I'm a third year entomology major and I'm joined by some pretty cool people. So Dina, if you want to take it over.
Hi, my name is Dina. I'm a junior and I'm a psychology major.
My name is Leon, and I'm a second year economics major student.
My name's Anthony, and I'm a fourth year psychology student.
All right, sounds good, sounds good. So today we're of course talking about cults and how they relate to ruling the world. So Dina, I believe you know what you're just going to give us a basic definition of a cult real quick.
Yes, according to Merriam-Webster, a cult is defined as a small, often unorthodox religious group with extreme cohesive or dangerous beliefs. Although, according to Temerlin, cult-like situations don't just happen in religious groups. They can also happen in therapy. Sometimes therapists or authority figures misuse their power and take advantage of people who are already vulnerable. They called this an atogenetic perversion, meaning the therapy that's supposed to help actually ends up causing a lot of harm. This shows that cults can form anywhere when someone abuses power and creates too much control or dependency over others.
And furthermore, according to the researcher Greaser, um, before we go any deeper, we should probably get clear on what a cult is, what a cult actually is. Researchers don't fully agree on one definition, but most point on the to the same core features: a charismatic leader, a sure belief system, and really tight control over members' lives, their diet, their relationships, sometimes even their identity. And all of that control, well, it ultimately serves the leader's own agenda, even if his framing it has been for your good.
I mean, I think like we all think of like cults and like media as like being like mind control in almost a way where it's like people just come in and they like get indoctrinated and it's like all accidental, but like there's actually like long processes happening there and there's like years or almost months of like this like indoctrination and this like start of like belief that like you don't really see a lot in media anymore.
Yeah.
So, how are these cults governing or being governed by people look like when we're actually in a cult?
I could start this off. I found another study done by Castano, Bellinger, and Moyano, basically showing how cults create a strong power dynamic between leaders and members, which is similar to the idea of people governing or being governed. Um, in cults, leaders often take on a role like governors, quote unquote. They set the rules, control information, and influence how members act and think. Members, on the other hand, become the governed, often following these rules without questioning them. A similar idea is something we've learned in class, like groupthink, where someone of higher power has this control over our minds and we kind of just agree with them to because we feel unclear or uncertain. I'd say like the difference between that in a healthy system of government is that there's usually checks and balances, rights, and
Mhm.
some level of choice. But in cults, I feel like this balance is kind of missing.
Right. Also, people being governed will completely comply without even realize it. Researchers draw on Milgram's obedience studies to remind us that ordinary people under the right situation, no pressure, will follow authority way further than we would like to believe. That's not a cow thing, that's actually a human thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. So we've talked about kind of like what a cult is and like the governing process of it, but let's finally get into the nitty gritty. Why do people join cults? Like, what is the mentality behind that? And also, like, okay, fun little experiment. Do you guys think that you would be able to, could you be convinced to join a cult? Do you guys think?
I feel like it depends.
100%.
I feel like it depends on the approach. So I feel like a lot of people don't even realize that what they're getting themselves into, kind of like what we talked about before. So I feel as if their approach was convincing and seemed like somewhat a good idea, I feel like I'd kind of fall for it. I don't know.
I kind of agree with that. I think like we mentioned like that charismatic leader early on, but like that 100% like would work on me. If
Mhm.
somebody was like, "Hey, like you're so interesting, you're so cool, like I have a group of other interesting cool people that want to like be friends with you." I would fold like a chair. I kid you not.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
agree.
Dina, so why are people actually joining these cults?
Um, Another research article I found by Sirkin. People often join cults during times when they feel most vulnerable, such as periods of stress or loneliness. Um, Cults are often appealing at first, like we just spoke about, because they provide a strong sense of belonging, acceptance, structure, and purpose when someone feels, like I said, uncertain or disconnected from society. These groups can seem very supportive in the beginning, which makes it easier for people to kind of fall into that trap or become involved. Um, However, over time, involvement may increase dependency on the group and its leaders, which could end up being extremely harmful. Yeah, so that was my point on why people join. If anyone has a point on why people leave.
Well, actually, before we go to hop over to why people leave, I'd like to talk a little bit more about why people join. What I thought was interesting was the study cult membership, what factors contribute to joining and leaving. They discussed how I think it was I can't find the exact percent, but a notable percentage of the people in the study who joined who had long-term stressors in the year leading up to it found alleviation from those stressors. Now, these stressors were specified as like existential, so like life meaning, fulfillment reasons. So, as you talked about, feeling of social isolation can lead to people joining, conflict with family. Um, these are often validated by joining the group before the member is in the group to the point at which it comes to a detriment to them.
Mhm.
There's a short window where they see like an alleviation of these fulfillment needs that they aren't experiencing.
Absolutely. In fact, Egan Hunter, in his article about adolescents and like their involvement in cults, he mentioned like thoroughly about how like when you're at that like young age, all the existential dread of like your future life is just like forced on you. So it's like you're already in like the stage where I mean we were all teenagers where you're having like these identity conflicts, some like intelligent issues, but like you want this like ideal life ahead of you and then you're provided this opportunity where people are coming up to you and they're going, "Hey, I can provide that for you." Like it seems like a good deal. But following that, like what are some of these like we you're indoctrinated into a cult. What does the power dynamics of that look like?
So one of the biggest things is the appeal from. So the hierarchy of most cults is kind of top down. There's some kind of charismatic and often narcissistic leader. Um, they're able to create these environments where people feel safe and there's structure that members are able to engage in that keeps them coming back and feeling like a part of this group. Yeah, so essentially, the culmination of spiritual theatrics and extreme worship, these all act as they all benefit the cult leader, but they deeper entrench the members in this cult dynamic, um, which can lead to people losing a sense of identity, driving them to come back to the cult and try and engage harder or to try and follow the doctrine, tighter or whatever. So there's this big kind of top-down pressure that forces the people at the bottom to continue coming back. It's almost like a loop where individuals' needs are finally met for once, then there is some kind of coercive or manipulative tactic from higher ranking members to make them feel belittled.
Um, that talking about this like coercive and manipulation, Cotes actually talks about it in one of his papers, saying that there's like levels of like getting involved into a cult where like when you start out it's like direct rewards. It's like they're being super nice to me, they're making me feel like I have purpose and I belong, and then like over time it like turns into like a hand that is controlling you. So it's like sure you belonged, but now it's like you have to make other people feel belonged, you have to give back to the cult, like you got all these rewards right away. It's kind of like payback time now. So it's like how does direct rewards versus like dependency on the cult like evolve as time goes on?
Yeah, I agree with that. Another thing I actually saw that kind of relates to the power dynamic is the fact that these cults also rip you away from family members, your loved ones, friends, um, which is I feel like another point that adds on to the manipulation factor and
Absolutely.
like how quick the process happens and how detrimental it is to to the outside life you had.
Almost that like isolation where it's like you join the cult, but now you have like nothing left to go back to, even if you were to leave it.
Exactly, because I feel like it's also hard for the family members to understand. Let's say your mom and dad are wondering what you're up to, what are you doing, and you kind of have this oath or loyalty to this cult, and they can't understand, and the chances of the individual actually speaking on what they're going through, since they're so manipulative, so manipulated, um, like is extremely low. So the chances of that are low, and their family members are probably extremely confused. So when you go back to that, it's kind of like there's not really a something to go back to, like you said. Yeah.
It's almost like it's like human nature too to like feel kind of that like betrayal, like
Yeah.
your kid left you for a cult and now they're like coming back to you. So it's
Mm.
like you have to just like reopen up support when you've already taken it away.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah,
mean it can be hard, but let's talk about why do people leave that? How do they get out?
I think when people leave the cows mainly due to the dehumanization, de-individualization, when people start thinking that, hey, like I joined the community, it gives me a lot of dependence, but I start thinking that like I was pushed so hard and it actually like when we think about why people leave, we can think that the whole cow is more like a giant funnel designed to strip away your independence, right? Because as long as you stay in the community for a really long term, you start thinking that I start losing my independence. I start finding a person, a leader, or a community, and like gradually, like you hit a point of de-inhumanization where your old self totally fades away, and you just found out I probably miss myself, and you you kind of like start thinking about escape from the community. I think this is the point where people leave the counts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the that is a huge aspect of why people are driven to leave the lack of identity, or personal identity. That part can kind of go two ways. When an individual's sense of identity and agency is negated, their decision making is their decision making is challenged. Oftentimes, people are unable to address problematic events in their life when they don't feel like they have agency. And cults, like by almost a factor of how they're designed, try their hardest to reduce your agency. What spurs that lack of agency into being a, oh, this is bad, I have to leave, versus I need to try harder to appease the cult is, according to Haddington et al., being in between, exploring former cult members' experiences. the imperfections and contradictions, when those become apparent in the cult, especially amongst higher ranking individuals or cult leaders, that's the spur. Like, I don't have my sense of identity, but now I'm looking at these individuals who are interacting against the doctrine with no consequence, whereas I try my hardest to, I lose my sense of identity, and I still am not. I'm still, in consequence. And then to continue that, when an individual's ranking in the group hierarchy, because people stay in cults for like 20 years, so even if you are, not a leader of the cult, you can still 100% be
Hmm.
uh, have a ranked position in the cult. And to lose your sense of identity, to gain that position, to lose that hierarchy, almost makes you take a step back and go, hold on, what's going on here? So that those are a few kind of like in cult dynamics that push people to exit the cult.
Absolutely. Some final thoughts that I want to bring up is that the idea of like joining a cult, like we discussed when people join, is to like find this sense of identity, but you see that people leave it when it's like lost on them or like they kind of got like nothing out of this like cult experience except for like trauma and abuse. And inside of a um Feldman article, he writes about how like people who like suffer from abuse are more likely to join cults, and then also how people who leave cult situations are more likely to inflict abuse on others, and like that kind of cycle continues and cults don't help it in any means. Do you guys have any other final thoughts you want to discuss?
Um,
Um, Go ahead.
I think I'm all good with my points.
Beautiful.
Right. I think cows is more like back to the point where Dina has said when the person starts searching accounts, it's actually due to his circumstance, right? So I think why cow was built like over like summarize all the point that we have discussed today. I think one thing that we need to focus is the circumstance that individuals are currently experiencing. If you look at a person who have lost his family or a lot of things that he feel uh, like precious for him, if like he lose everything, he probably like thinking I need a community for me to support. I need some of the people like me who lost a lot of precious things and searching for settlement. So I think this is the main point where Cloud was built, and yeah, and therefore there are a lot of things that we analyzed today in this
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me once again on Cultivating Talks. We will not be back with another one. Thanks.